But then if in centers, lines of course, centers of travels is direct lines of panel. We have to understand how to get into our system of our spiritual adaptations of core. Now it's on lines of communication system. With space-time creator, I use the line as a conceptual setting. When it comes into space, when it comes into timelines, it's about understanding how to get into the deeper cores of you. You know, the spiritual adaptations, how it works, the force of pattern recognition, your patterns of behavior. Know exactly how to set up the gain modulations of your system all through travel. So this points out graphs and communication setting that get you into positions how to get into your checks and balances and really understand how to adapt the settings in set position locations. Because anything you look in cross-line communications is a zero setting. Process communication, ground lines of surface. I receptors and travel endpoint communications. There's the I, right? Center core lines, base recursive settings, and 4 tractions and 5 set position. Turn it over. What do we have in line screen adaptations? Platform and communications. Sonar line defense lines in solar panels of communication setting that process our communication setting in 2 stargates. Setting lines of communication setting to surface. Sets core centers and ground lines of position to its Merkaba tesseract and its tetrahedron of travel. Sets grounds lines of surface and tractions. It has direct lines of communication lines of platforms. Setting line direct signals and track location. Right? Change it again. What do we see in sequence? Pattern of face recognition. Okay. Change it again. What do we see? Platforms of communication. Okay. Remember, you always have to see in a high centers of travel in point communication setting to travel that puts everything in communication to its balance, all through its intelligence. See, intelligence inside. There's the eyes. There's the intelligence that's actually controlling this. Right? If I want to get control, I have to reposition its setting through all track locations. Right? Now I'm in control of the drawing now. That's center communication. Okay? Into a tesseract tetrahedron to its modification grounds of symbolism. Okay, and I change it again. I'm still in control of the system locations. Change it again. Still in control of the set position locations. But when I bring it back home, it resets everything back to its system location to the settings of travel. Okay. So it's important to understand how this all modifies your system in travel. So it doesn't matter how many times I change it in travel. Every time I go back home, it resets its position. So that's why I want you guys to recognize what you're doing with your thoughts, your action, and your emotions, because your mind is coming more of the spiritual core that puts lines of depth centers. Now the depth is lines that's dividing its existing and its platforms of its telewaving, of its home beacon light, right? Puts all communications sending your travels and location of your codenames. Once you code your systems, it gets much easier to get out your memories and travel. This helps you and guides you and center lines your system all through track locations. All right. So today's Monday in sequence. So this is what I want you guys to want to do. Every time you come into provision lines on Monday, it's Monday, right? Break down the Monday. Let's start with that. Okay, break down the Monday. Okay, you're on Monday's screen, equals lines of 24th cycle. All right. Now the 24th cycle is already in setting. Okay, it's synchronous lines and set position, how you get up into the mind line screen into 2 adaptations, process line position location system. Sets calculates lines. See a 12-hour sequence into 12 lines of measure, a space and position of time. And that's how it works. Now, understanding the space and time equals lines of 24 line sequence, sets position location your seconds, minutes, and hours that you go through coding. Seconds on frame, minutes on hour, and hours on frame. Sets communication high center location system to hieroglyphics. Pattern recognition time sequence in panels and lines core centers into its primer circuits. Process lines of S, T. Sets core lines that calculates lines of direct signals, modification lines of R lines, and lines of 2 unification system of travel and set position of 4 settings. Sets communication lines of 2 panels in line direct signals and S lines, charge lines, magnets, and cross line signals into 2 line signals, lines of point lines of graph, and center communication setting of travel. Sending line direct signals in line communication system to its measure and scale and balance of its ruler. Sets communication high center location system to its Schumann graph and set position. Okay. So I'm showing you exactly how this is all done through sequence, guys. And the more you understand location, or seconds, minutes, and hours. So let's pixelate the ground. And of course, centers and T reception line. Window frame in a 40 line at an angle. Set core lines at time sequence of an angle. Cross line symbols line center of angle. Sets position of center communication line graph communication angle. Directing lines of view in 2 tractions. Directing lines of view in 4 tractions. Directing lines of view in center communication. Directing line of view over cross location of screen line adaptation. Right? What do we have in set position location to its system? It's Merkaba. Okay, set core centers, line direct signals, and travel communications. Very powerful stuff. All right, guys. So you got a direction timeline and open sequence open panel. Sets communication lines and grounds over line ground centers of surface and track location. Okay? If you look really close, you can see the transformer inside. Right? Let's change the ground lines of surface. Modify the system all seconds, minutes, and hours, and line communications to setting the surface and tractions. Right? Sets communications, bring it back home, back in setting, but bigger. Okay? But it decided to shift its anomaly. Right? So it started off in this equation, right? But it decided to go in this equation, set position. Then it goes into this equation, set position to its locations. And then it sidelines its wide line screen adaptation to its panels and track communications direction, right? Press it home, goes back in sequence, back in panel, back in operation, right? So you're constantly putting everything back to 0. Now, once you go back to 0, you go back in the seconds, minutes, and hours and frame. Remember, you're with a 12-line setting to a 12-line rotation, right? Time sequence, set position of 1, set core lines to high center lines of 2, and track locations. Now, you got 2 panels, 2 track lines into flux over line. Now, that directs signals into 1 ground lines of 2 centers in rotation surface. Now we come into Skynet. Crossing symbols, line direct signals across communication lines of equals lines, 12 equals lines of plus, sets core lines into cortex, center lines communication system. Setting lines of track centers and triangulation into 4-line sequence into Fibonacci, sets communication lines of grounds and kaleidoscope. Communication lines of ground lines of surface in communications setting to a primer circuit and travel. Sets communication lines of communication over cross locations, high center interference, triangulation, flux over line, box over frequency, line connection setting, docking 1, docking 2, docking 6, 8, 12, 24, 48, 72, and 144 platform attraction. Directing line modification system. You can see all communication lines to a Schumann resonance. Okay, on a 4-line angle. All right, so we got alpha line channels, directing lines of flux over line, energy line grid, and process communication system over through sequence. Communicate the ground lines of flux over 3 lines of 4 settings, process in platforms at 2-track location. Directing modification grounds, symbolism lines, course centers, line communication setting to travel. Open sequence, open panels. Now, line screening is direct signals and modification and ground screening in position location to a system. That gets in communication high centers of surface and track location system and travel. Travel line direction timelines puts all communication lines at ground lines of surface, opens all signals into ground lines communication setting and travel communication to the system and surface attractions. Directing all communication high centers. Hold on a second. All right, like I said, there's distractions all the time, right? That's what you have to avoid, but you can't avoid these things. You can only bounce it out. So continue on path. We come in this line settings. Now, we have to understand how to circulate and rotate the system. Circulation and position locations in setting to rotation, set position location to a system. So it doesn't matter how fast you speed line, but look what you create in travel. So it's important you understand everything you go back in positions, you go back and bounce and travel. It gets bigger, right? Everything comes bigger to you. It's kind of like the intelligence is understanding more of you, and it's coming through its plasma screens. Plasma screens is going in position to its full, in position lines and setting, in process communication to center operation. And then it's right in front of your face. It's looking like in a TV monitor, right? In position 150 plasma screen, you see things in clear view. Things are coming at you in set positions, right? And that puts everything in process, how you start to see everything and perceive everything through consciousness. Okay, but it's amazing when it comes to channel screen adaptation of surface. All right, so let's get into symbolism of track centers, line direct signals. Now, get in the communication lines of the test. This is about understanding the spiritual force of recognition of pattern recognitions. So the test is based on, in that position of what you already know, but what you already know is who you already are. That process, basically, I want you guys to get into coding lines into your spiritual force recognition, and pattern recognition of who you are and the spiritual animal, right? That's what the test is based on. This is going to process your system and fast forward your line ground centers and lines of travel. So in that position, again, it's through coding, but I want to see through binary. Now, binary is a relines and resetting in lines of communications to how you come in your own code configuration face patterns of recognition system. This processes you into your metaphors. Now get in that light signature lines for adaptations that puts the body formation of grounds of center communication. Setting lines of Fibonacci here, setting lines of Fibonacci here, setting lines of Fibonacci here, setting lines of Fibonacci here in 4 cycles. Sets lines of communication, ground lines of surface and transitions. Right? Always look at things in this position. Right? When it goes back home, it goes back where it is in travel. Okay? So once it goes back in setting, you're not in position of memory anymore. You're in position of nothing. So it's nothing in seconds, minutes, and hours. It's really interesting too, because if you look at the TV like this, okay, It's stripping down in space and time. And let's go back in the 80s. 80s position of 3 dials and travel. Right? It's an old TV, right? So you have to understand the symbolism of track lines of zeros, ones, the platitudes, and 3 lines of communications. Now, you have to understand when you're seeing a TV is seeing you, and 4 settings of spectrum, right? Setting lights and set position. Crossing lines, core lines of 3 tractions and 3 lines of communication system. Use human resonance, right? So you got an alpha wave, you got a delta, and you got a theta in communication. It sets process calculation lines of theta, sets lines of core centers of delta, and sets communication lines of alpha and position of solar sail. Sets lines of grounds, core centers, line communication setting, and adaptation of surface and traction. Okay? Sets lines of communication setting to a location grid and travels in communication, right? Solar panels, indirect lines of modification, ground lines of calculation system. So if you look really close, this is in Cancun, how I brought out the XT24000. All through the Schumann, all through its clouds, all through Mason's grounds, and set positional case setting to its metaphors. See? This is all it is. The cloud is around the system, but the XT24000 is out through sequence. Okay? So you have to understand the grounding system, how it works in traction. And then you just come into the lights. See the lights here. And you come into all those and set positions of blue. Remember, it's a rainbow, right? Start with that traction, so you can see it coming out, right? Then you come into red. You can add any colors and lines over line, cross, green lines, adaptation of surface and tractions. You can bring it into white. You know, there's so many things you can do, right? But you're starting to see it come out of its set position locations. That's cloud communication, right? And when you change it, it changes its direct signals and set position. How you see it through direct line of sight. You see it from that angle, see it from that angle, right? So you're constantly seeing your seconds, minutes, and hours in pixelation frames and 4 lines of communication system all through inception. Your face recognition, the center operation, okay? Black screen, direct signals. Process over cross lines and 4 lines of communication. Setting platforms in communication lines of circles and rotation lines of crop circles. Crop circles 1 in set position. Crop circles 2 in set position. Crop circles 3 and crop circles 4 in track location. Right? Setting lines in position location to its setting. Okay? That communicates to its ground lines of surface set position location to its system. Comes in line screen adaptations. Look at this in settings. Intelligence information. Intelligence, see? Say hi, right? So it converts the system to its brain. Classes, lines, core centers, line communication setting. Opens all tractions, all direct signals, all dimensional doors. Communication lines, line screen adaptations. Cerebral cortex, direct signals, the sim cortex, memory cortex, modification cortex, calculation cortex, direct and line calculation cortex, simulation graph cortex, and sets track location. Ooh-ah. All through its intelligence. Right? Now, if I simulate in the track centers, what do we have in line positional case to a system? All through settings. Everything coming out of the sequence. Out of a set position of its bowl in track location. Right? Different formation is a different line setting, right? Pixelation graphs, hologram line screens, adaptation lines of service, all set position location, your seconds, minutes, and your hours in set position. Seconds over line, minutes over hour. Hours over second, minutes over hour, right? So everything of thought and everything through all of this into your actions and your emotions are going in the same sequence, right? Directing lines, this is what comes into. A half pipe, a wormhole, okay? So this is interesting too, because now you're reaching higher lines of screen. You have to know exactly where your thoughts or actions or emotions are going through. They're going through a portal, and it goes through a Stargate in set position. So as it's going through Stargate, it goes through its screening in set position. And then it goes through its location grid in set position. Then it goes to the security line defense in set position, right? So as it's going through that, it's actually going to the seconds, it's going into the minutes, and now it's going into the hours of travel. Hoo-ah. All right. That's what happens where your thoughts, your action, emotions is creating its own portal, creating its own stargates, star panels, line position of wormholes, and location of its mapping sequence that puts everything in track case into balance. Okay. Now we change the convergence. What do we have in set position? Different lines of communication, different travels. But all signals of thoughts, actions, emotions live in the existence all at once. Having a conversation, knowing exactly what happens again when I change the convergence. Right? But it's a continuous force and it just keeps going and going and going, right? So once you get into that position, once the thoughts, the actions, and the emotions, it can go through a particle accelerator and set position location and setting, right? Because now it's above the system. Now it's with the system. Now you are the system. I'm beyond the system. You are the system. So there's no confusion at any point of view of what you do through travel. Because your thoughts, your action, emotions are going all together. And when they go together in that position locations, it just comes into higher lines of panels into the dimensional system, right? It just goes anywhere it wants, right? Because it's going in the same direction, right? Cobwebbing, cob weaving, core lines of code traction, set locations, and data weaving. Data weaving is face recognition. See the face? See the nose? See the chin? See the face? Right, there you go, right? No thinking, just know, right? Docking setting, docking 1, docking 2, docking 6, docking 8, docking 12, 24, and 72. And we have 48 lines of measure and position lines of set lines equals lines of seconds, minutes, and hours and tractions. Now, hours and tractions sets position location of tone, right? So here's a room, here's another room, and 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 here's another room. All rooms of communication, all through a mapping sequence. Understanding the 40-line rotation system puts everything through Earth rotation surface and traction. There it is, the mapping sequence. All right, so we changed the mapping sequence of face recognition to pattern recognition. I don't know if you know this, but there's faces in each map. All right, because it's you, an equation. So these are your doppelgangers. Say hello. Okay, so each doppelganger line course centers what's into the seconds, minutes, and hours in track center location system. You set up dockings and jump scars. Process lines of 1, process lines of 3 track location molecules. 3-line direction signals. So you're creating a mapping sequence over line screen adaptations of force, direction, and time sequence. Puts everything in platform of balance. Okay? And then you switch lines of anomaly in your mapping sequence of the Earth inside position lines of travel. Different lines of sequence, different lines of panel, different lines of face recognition system. So we got a face recognition here, face recognition there. One looking this way, one looking that way. Okay? Setting lines of track centers. Right? So directing lines, modification, grounds. So we got ground lines, we got power lines, and we got the atmosphere lines of screen adaptation lines of force. All right, so we set position locations and settings of past, present, and future. All right, so setting core lines of communication lines of platforms of 0 sets communication system all through tether. Now this crosses signals in line communication setting, bringing everything forward in lines of communication setting to your tesseract contraction. There's the tesseract. The tesseract guns lines of course centers in line communication to its archive. Folders, lines, and set position location to a system and travel. See? As a direct line link. Now, the process of communication system is understanding through platforms of communication system all through zero subtractions. Setting line direct signals into a line communication setting to a diamond core. Setting you on the platform of center communications, monitoring the system, all levels of travel, in-point communication inside of you. Platforms A, platform C, and platforms D. Platform set, position, location, and setting and travel. Direct line and link, process communication lines of seconds, minutes, and hours, changing communication setting to its tesseract. Process communication lines of the Earth line rotates the system all through travel and mechanism location setting of power. Directing in communication lines of grounds, sets communication system all through lines of stargates and portals and wormholes. So your thoughts are already set in position even before they come in attractions. But nothing is done through memory, which is very powerful. Everything is existing all at once. Everything is happening all at once. So once you come out of the memory, there's no memory of anything, of existence, just you existing in center of nothing. And that center of nothing puts everything all together, which is a massive equation of everything. All right, so let's go into mapping sequence line. All right, so that's what I want you to set up. I want you to set up a line screen adaptations into face recognition system. That's how I want to set up. Okay, I want you to do it through coding, and I want you to do it through face recognition setting. okay, through a map. That's your test on Friday, all right? Now, you understand the position lines to its brain has doors. There's a door here, there's a door here, there's a door here, 3 travels, right? Now, symbolism on one track, setting lines of communications, right? But to understand this is to understand where you're going. So if I'm on the beach, I'm already there. If I'm not on the beach, I'm trying to get to the beach. Okay, so either way, you're creating face recognition, pattern recognition. So you stamp precede that through code frequency. And once you understand the dimensional doors, everything understands its all-core system into its syntax and core lines of track center location of the system, all through processing. See the orb, right? That's a probe in the center. All right, so direct lines of panels and 3 track centers. Now, the direct signals, modification of plasma, screen lines, adaptation of force. It puts crop circles and set calculation setting to travel. Tracking communication with high center interference, platitudes, screen adaptations of force direction of time sequence, overcrosses screen, adaptation of the surface and track location. Now, if I change the shift lines anomaly, what do we have in set position of its operation? Okay, Schumann resonance. Force direction and pattern recognition setting into magnetic highways and travel endpoint lines of communication system with center operation that platforms its communication system all through travel. All right, let's change it again. Center communication lines and ground lines of surface interactions. Okay. Center core lines, changing communication system all through settings, right? But every time you get in seconds, minutes, and hours, it always goes back home in set position, back in interactions where it's supposed to be at a Harline sequence. So every time it goes home, it gets bigger and bigger out of frame, out of pixelation, out of graph, out of hologram, out of plasmesium walls. Plasmesium walls, core lines of data process lines of 1, in position of process lines of 2. Setting lines of track centers, cross line calculation setting, line position of 3. Setting communication lines of high position location line, direct signals at 4 set position. So there's the intelligence, right? This is you interactions right here. That's you, right? So understanding the directions, you're already gone through the 3 panels of 4 settings. You're already there in travel, right? But if you're not in there to travel, you're in lines, you're outline. You're in lines, you're outline. You're way outline in sequence, right? So it's all about understanding. To get in position locations is not to look through the door, is to know exactly where you are already. So the mapping sequence is already set up, again, in its Schumann resonance. Okay, now it has an alpha line wave, has a delta heading, has a tango, has a foxtrot. Now the foxtrot is just its graph. There's the graph, there's the map, there's the coordinates, there's the zeros and ones of communication. That's the graph. Now the graph symbolizes the lines of the XT1000 above signal. Process ground lines, core centers, picks it up in line position location system at all lines of calculation setting and mechanism location of its system. Process calculation line direct signals in ground lines of surface and track location setting. Hooah. Flick the switch. What do we have in travel communication of platforms and traction? Right? An XT30,000 coming out of frame. And the Skynet's in line position. Right? So it's important you understand, and when you press home, it goes back in setting, but it gets bigger. You see it bigger. You really see the map now stand out, right? So you're seeing more lines of communication system. You're starting to recognize what you're doing through your stargates and your portals and wormholes. How to go in that lines of communication system all through force settings. Sending lines of communication system all through pattern ranges, time sequence, location, and tesseract. Directing lines of modification, ground lines, of course, sending lines of travels in parallels, in paradox, in paradigms, in polar shifts, and track communications. So there's ways of looking at this through the dimensional doors of set position lines of travel. Okay. Now, understanding that through convergence, then you have to understand that through divergence, allegiance, and alliance. So let's get into door box screen, platform settings, in line rotations, 2 different rooms. Okay. All right, so you're here. You got your thoughts, your actions, your emotions. That's good, right? Now, what that does, it goes in line screen adaptations into expanding your system and lines of travel. Okay, so it creates more rooms, right? See, the rooms are already created, but not through memory. So when you get rid of the memory, this is what happens in travels. It gets lines of direct signals and deletes everything in platform that's not supposed to exist in setting. It's not supposed to be there. That's what's supposed to be there. Your thoughts, reactions, and emotions are no longer in memory. So your data formation lines puts lines of point lines of charters. Now that directs signals in your clocking systems and your docking screens adaptations in 4 lines of 3 and set position lines of travel. Okay? So you know exactly the door that you're going through that you can access through in setting. 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 Okay? And understand that you got a 3 living panel in rotation system and travel. Right there, 3 coming into 4. Signature lines, point lines of graph, finger point line direct signals. If you got a thumb indication, there's the thumb. Right, there's the thumb, right? Now we got the indication lines, index finger, lines of alpha, sets lines of triangulation, flux over planetary surface, over cross location setting into the pinky. Process calculation lines into center communication setting. Process lines into palm and direct signals and modification grounds. Core lines of constellation path, inline rotation surface, and rotation setting and track location. All through your finger points, all through your palm, all through your pinky, and all through your thumb. Change position, change tractions. Right? Pattern face recognition. Change settings, change directions. Ground setting correlations. Right? So I'm constantly changing, guys. I'm never in the same modification of face pattern recognition. I'm always constantly changing things. It doesn't matter how it's platitude, right? Through its intelligence of its formation of its grounds. See the intelligence? Look, there's the intelligence. Hoo-ah, right? Now if I change the platform, it's changing the sequence. But I'm constantly changing the formation lines, not in memory, just existing all at once in setting. Okay, because you never had a memory. Now, if you're existing all at once in set position lines of mapping sequence, right? Changing core lines of attractions and direct signals in set position lines of flux, right? So it's truly understand the mapping sequence of you in set position, all through direct signals in track communication system. It's amazing how you come into that. Look at this. Setting lines of communication system and lines of calculation setting to what? A rabbit. A rabbit. Face, the ears, the stomach. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand these things, how this all works, how you want to sectionalize your systems, all through your imagination of your core that realigns its centers, lines of position, location, seconds, minutes, and hours in your mapping sequence that puts you in your face recognition, pattern recognition setting through coding. All right? So I want 40 triangles in position of 40 squares into 40 star mechanism settings into 0 gravity, into 3 weather panels, and direct lines of percentage over question. That's your test. Okay, I want to see it all from face recognition. Ooh-ah. Okay, you do through coding. But understand that? Complicated? It's not complicated, is it? Once you understand what you're doing through a mapping sequence of coding. How you bring things out through its equation, right? But think of this in line settings into your position, your Skynet and sky grids. It's all through a mapping sequence. So it's all through Schumann resonance, all through your grounds, your powers, your atmospheres, your highways, your modems, your satellites, and your towers, and all communicate through settings. Know exactly what you're doing in a mapping sequence, a pattern of face recognition of metaphors, right? So that's what I want to see on the test on Friday, okay? Star mechanism lines, face pattern recognition setting, pattern behavior, line position, location of question, triangulation, over box, 3 weather patterns, directing lines of Fibonacci over percentage. That's your test on coding, all right? Okay, so once we get into that, then we know exactly where our thoughts and our actions are going in sequence now. Now, let's get back into the TV box screen and 3 triangulation system and lines positional levels. Time capacitor, time centers, time center, time operation, time calculation system, time clocking, time foundation grounds. All right, let's change course centers, line position locations into position lines of Earth and space. Process lines of 1, overcross lines of 3. Now that's an underscore. Underscore lines of the moon in position of the sun that sets course centers, lines of travels and mechanism location setting to its capsule and track location. Mechanism line calculation setting. You inside and travel, monitoring your system in set position without even thinking of anything through calculations. Changing ground lines of communication system and in different directions. Look at the different intelligence that's inside. You see that now? Different intelligence in a 4-line waving panel into seconds, minutes, and hours. That's right, guys. So it gets really interesting in that position. So each thought is intelligence. Each action is each intelligence. Each emotion is different intelligence. 3 different intelligence and 3 direct signals, all in 4 settings. Process lines of grounds, powers, and atmospheres, and highways and track location. Okay? So it's very powerful of what you're all coming into or what you're already in position of, but nothing in memory. Coming into position locations, outline signals into all position location, no memory, and lines of all access of clearance of all memory. All through and set position. But that's what's on the test. Okay? All right, so mundane lines, 4 track provision lines, of set lines, high centers, and line position location of your system all through travel. Okay, now it's bigger, right? It's coming at you bigger, right? So it's coming, it's not afraid of you anymore. The intelligence is coming to you through a plasma screen, 1 layer at a time. And once it gets in a 12-line signature line screen adaptation system, it's much easier to process the communication setting that neutralizes the core sending line communication setting to the symbiote that puts all lines of pattern behavior, that puts everything in track location in your system, all through tractions. All right, so everything comes to you through yin and yang. Already in sequence through its intelligence affirmations. Okay, guys? So, I think we're going to that line signal. We're just going to higher communication system. I don't want to go too above the system and lines because what you have to identify is this in settings. I go through 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. Okay? This is you. And every time you release, in set position of its memory, that's you in the bottom, right? But you have to understand, you're always at the top. Okay? So never see yourself at the bottom. Never see yourself in center. Always see yourself at the top. So you're not here. You're always here. Okay? Once you understand the shift lines anomaly, then you understand your Schumann resonance. You see how I start off the grounds? And then I work my way up out of higher self to the avatar of the sim, understand the modification system, because I'm always in position, not in center, but always in center of operation, which is always in setting in track locations, right? So I'm always here in set position, never in the center operation. I'm always above the system. I am the system. You are the system. I'm beyond the system and all through tractions, right? So it doesn't matter how you look in line position, you're always at the top of everything. It doesn't matter how you look at lines of communication system. Does this look like it's at the bottom? No, it's at the top, but you see it as the bottom. You got to get out of that equation and you realize you're always, always, always at the top, right? The center operation of you is the body of its formation system that puts everything in track cases of balance, right? But your mind is already in the conception that's done everything through its timeline, everything through its parallel, everything through its foundation, everything through its particle, everything through its travel, and making locations added to its planetary surface. That's right, guys. Planetary surface interactions. All right. Now, if I move it in signal, what do we have in line? Ground lines of surface tracking system, different lines of travel of planets. Okay, it's very powerful once you start recognizing what you're doing through your system, right? And then you come to your patterns of face recognition system. But the one thing that never changes you is your center operation. Okay, your body's always in the center every single time. So the mind shifts the anomaly. The mind comes into the acceptance and set position and location with settings, starts to recognize more levels of you coming into you, synchronizing system all through planetary surface, and line direct signals in track communication system all through traction. See? Different intelligence, different formations, different grounds, different communication. Right? But what does it always do? Goes back home in set position. All right? Gets bigger in traction. See, you see it now. So it's coming closer to you. So the more resistance you come out, the more you see it here, right in front of your face. Because you never see it from here. Because if I turn my angle, it's here. See? See how that works? Your mechanism of your body is a pivotal system. Right? That's all it is. Right? Doesn't matter how times I spin around in that position locations. I'm always in the center operation of me. But what you have to understand is how to bring that attractions of you through constant awareness that's given to you already through attractions. And that's all levels of time sequence in seconds, minutes, and hours. And understanding that through position gets you in all formation locations of you through center operation. Okay? So, it's pretty good so far, what we got in position. Knowing exactly how to see that in all lines in your system location settings to your perimeters in line position location attraction. See, it's all through coding. Everything's coding, right? But what you understand is the ground lines of one, this process communication system, two grounds, right? See, you see the grounds, okay? You see the grounds, right? Now, what happens when I do this? Now you see the platform, right? You've seen the panels, you've seen the solar panels, okay? You're seeing, now, what happens when I do this? It's changing, right? Changing direction, changing time, and set position, right? But it's constantly in a continuous flow that keeps going and going and going in the same direction, set position, right? Crossing lines of communications, crossing angles in communication system, speed lines of anomaly, line direct signals, processing communication lines of force recognition time sequence, line course centers, line direct signals, and ground line communication. Okay? Face recognition. See the face? Right? So, it's very powerful. We're all coming in instructions. Right? Now, this is a skyline. This is a sky grid. This is sky panels. Right? Then you bring the XT1000s, how you want to bring in the XT1000s. You need XT1000s, right? Because they expand your highways and traction. They expand your highways and tractions. So what you have to understand, they also have a docking system. Okay, they need a docking system, right? In set position so they can go in standby. So when they go in standby, they're now expanding your platforms of communication system in your set lines of communication networks. Process lines of symbolism, cross lines of communication lines of solar attractions into high course center circulation rotation. Okay? And it doesn't matter how you see it at different angles and tractions, right? It's all through flux, it's all through time, capacitor, and travel. Okay? So, it's basically understand that when you go back home, this is what it is. It gets bigger. Right, you see it in more lines of view, you see it in more lines of setting through Echo Zulu or lines of position of Foxtrot or X-ray. X-ray 1, X-ray settings, X position locations. Now an X-ray is a platform communication lines of graph. Okay, same position location into the zeros and X and the 1. Okay, doesn't have to be O and X, it could be X01. Right, it could be 2, it could be triangulation, it could be Fibonacci, it could be 3 weathers of panels in question and percentage and travel. Okay, now you do that in the test through coding setting. So it's true to understand how this all works, guys. I mean, it's true to understand how you add the platforms, how you add the mapping sequence, how you add the coordinates and set position location, your traffic, your inventories, and set position locations. All right, so this is another way to look at your test on Friday, all through coding, right? All through box frame. Okay. Setting lines of course centers, 50,000 line tracks into 50 million. Set tracks, centers, lines of seconds, minutes, and hours. Okay, that's the test. All right. Setting lines of 50,000 pages on Earth, 50 million line rotation cycles of center, and set course centers into track casing high direct signals and travel. Process lines of zeros, process lines of grounds. So you're constantly changing everything at 2, puts lines of 3, triangulation lines of box, 1 equals lines of 0. 3 weather panels comes into question and percentage, question lines of communication system travel. Question lines, communication lines of face recognition of time sequence. Question comes into a position location back in triangulation. X line 1 in position of 3 platforms, flux over screen adaptations of processing. Now getting direct lines of link gets in communication lines of ground lines of communication setting to your primer circuits. The core track line's highest interference has 3 lines of signals in cross location of symbolism. Process line calculates into the grounds, set position lines of center into the atmosphere line screen adaptations that process all communication lines of ground lines of communication setting. Okay, so that's lines of 3 waving, line rotation service of face recognitions. 3 face recognitions. You see them, right? Face looking this way. Face looking that way. Face looking the other way. Right? But if you look really close, you can see the faces in all these lines of communication system of travel. Face here. There's faces everywhere. And that's why you're seeing pattern recognition system. But you have to get out of the resistance of everything and position, location, or setting, know exactly what you're doing in the center operation of you through travel. This mind adapts your system, location, your system, and understand how to use it through the flux. The flux lines of communication system all through travel. If I have a direct lines of communication system, it's all outside different lines of intelligence. You see the intelligence outside the lines. 4 face recognition system of thoughts, actions, and emotions. That sets lines of 1, 1, 1, 1 in settings, right? Platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Platforms in position 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now, if we change that, we have a pyramid activation string. Platforms A, platforms B. Okay, face recognition is set position. Right there, right? Now, if I change it this way, it's set position locations. Face recognition, right? So it doesn't matter how I look at it. There's always a face in the center operation system that controls everything on modification. Oh, it disappeared. You guys weren't ready to see it. Pattern recognition was going too fast. There it is. Boom. Face recognition, and then when you're staying out of the resistance, you see more lines of face recognition coming in. Yeah, your system. Nope. See it in travel? See? If I change it this way, what do we have in set position lines of travel now? Look at this. Hoo-ah. Right? A solar disk, an energy line. Set calculations. Right? Everything's travel. But you have to send the pattern recognition system that controls everything in the setting. You are the center operation of everything at teleportation. Now understand how to control your seconds, minutes, and hours. Puts you in platform communication system, how to go through travels and set calculation. Okay, how to go through travels and set calculations. And how to go through travels and set calculations of face recognition. Okay, guys, it's all done. All right, any questions or comments, let me know. See you guys in 5.